Wisdom Now starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark here for Wisdom and Knowledge. And I'm just thrilled to have Heidi Luv back on the podcast. In case you missed our last episode, we were talking more along the lines of her being a nurse and the COVID narrative and what was going on there. But she has come back because she is a former, Mormon, and she's just going to break down the whole, Mormon religion and the cult-like things that they're doing there. And Heidi, welcome back to the podcast. This is such a thrill.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad to be back. I love to come on and share my story and tell people, well, not just my story, but I think the story of a lot of people that leave the church. And a lot of people are silenced or just like move on with their lives or what. And some completely reject God afterwards. And that makes my heart sad. So I decided I'm going to just talk about it. And, people always get to the part where they do the weird culty stuff. And then even the best of the Mormon podcasts go, and it's sacred. So we're not going to do that. No, I'm going to do that.
I love it.
I'm not doing this, by the way, any Mormons or ex-Mormons that think this is hideous that I go there. I have a reason because they lied to me and made me a Mason. And so therefore it's all free game to me. And so I don't do it to be mean. I don't do it to be nasty, but I do it to spread knowledge. That's why we're here, wisdom and knowledge, so that people can make an informed decision. Because if I had an informed decision to make, I would not be a Freemason or one like that in any form and lie to you and tell you it's about going to heaven. So.
And what I love about you is that you speak your mind. You're not afraid, and you have your own podcast, Unfiltered Rise, which we'll add below. And this is just going to be such a thrill. So let's get this thing started.
Awesome.
You have some
we'll
slides,
do it.
right?
All right.
Show?
I do. And
Excellent.
So a little background before I crack this open is I was a Mormon, was born into the church. I was a Mormon until I was 34 years old. I got my endowments. I was married in the temple for time and all eternity. Thank heavens that's not, because he's a real I don't want to be attached for time and all eternity to that one. And also all the rights and the stuff therefore in that we're going to get into. And so I kind of like to tell people like, yes, this was my experience. Yes, this is real. I just put it out there and I'm brutally honest. So I found things that I don't think I've ever seen on most people that go into Mormonism. They usually, let me get this pulled up. They usually do the normal, like, oh, this might be a little culty, this or that, but they don't get into the literal occult side of things.
Okay.
Which I ran into on accident. I'm just okay. Before I was a podcaster, I'm just a mom. I have 6 kids. I'm a Mormon, and I'm not anymore.
No, yeah, I know, but I know exactly what you mean.
Exactly. Right. And I'm from Utah. So I live in Utah. And so, I was just a lady at home and didn't think my story really mattered. And come to find out, people want to know. So here I am. Unbeknownst to me, God was like, guess what you're going to do? And I was like, oh my gosh, nobody's going to listen to me. I don't know 5 people in real life. And now I know lots of people, just not in regular life, all online and wonderful. So I have a whole new community to speak to. So this is the God that I truly believe the Mormons worship. And I don't believe they know except at the highest echelon. They hide things, and that's just part of their religion. So the reason why I found this was because I found this little excerpt and it led me down a little road. I'm not an occult major. I'm not, I have multiple degrees, but nothing in this stuff. I'm not into stuff like that in the past, but here I am and figured it out. And this excerpt is actually from Joseph Smith's mother. That's her own handwriting. And down at the bottom is a little, decipher because you can't read that. But it says, let not my reader suppose that because I shall pursue another topic for a season that we stopped our labor and went at trying to win the faculty of a brack, drawing magic circles or soothsaying to the neglect of all kind of business. Okay. First of all, the house of a brack is faculty of is abraxas. And it's where we get the words abracadabra from. So that should sound familiar.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it is literally the worship of abraxas. And he is considered, depending on what road you go down, if you go down a Gnostic road or if you go down just regular mythological type studies, he is a god. He's considered by Jung and like all of these people like the god of all gods, and he's really deep for gnosis. So I do believe the church knows these things. This little insight is so interesting how this ended up out and about. They actually had a man gather history and do some stuff and write a book, and it's called The Magical World of Mormonism or something. I'll find it. But the thing is he did it as a full-fledged Mormon. He was a Mormon. He wasn't doing this to hurt anybody or like speak out or whatever. Well, he got excommunicated shortly after, not only for that, because of certain choices in his life too, but I'm just saying, I find the timing super interesting, right?
It has
And yeah, the magic worldview, that's what it was. So I think that people, and you can still get this book today, let me give you the author so that people can actually know who it is. I have the book, but it's upstairs because I'm constantly, my nose is in it. So I should know the author, but at this point, yeah, Michael. Okay. So, Michael D. Quinn is Early Mormonism and the Magical Worldview. And it's good.
Okay.
It's a really good book. It goes into, and everybody in the church will say, yeah, that's true, but it was folk magic and that's not real. And, everybody was doing it then. Well, here's the thing. The Smiths were, his mom was a first generation Scottish. She was the first one to be born here. Her dad was from Scotland. This is right around the time that there's a whole bunch with her father's era of problems with witchcraft because of, all of the burning at the stake. So I'm sure she was in a big hurry to get out of there, but I can't prove that she had any affiliation with any of that stuff. The dad was well known to be involved in treasure digging, money digging, and he had, masonry connections. Their other son is named Hiram, like Hiram Abiff. But the church likes to cover this up with a magical bow. This is a diagram drawn from an actual Willard Chase gave his why can't I remember the name? He gave his speech up at a courthouse when I can't remember the name of that right now. Anyway, he had written everything down because Joseph Smith got in trouble for treasure digging. Okay. And so they had all affidavit. That's the word. I don't know. It's later here. His affidavit was that Joseph Smith and his father had been employed by him for treasure digging. They used a sword and drew these magical circles, and they slit one of his fattest black sheep at midnight and let the blood spray all over in a circle, and this is going to bring him treasure. None of this sounds like something you should be doing if you're like upstanding Christian people.
Not at all.
It's a lot. No. And the great thing about these affidavits are there's many of them by other people as well. And it gives us a clear picture. And I'll get into his affidavit again here in a bit, but it gives us a picture of what was really going on with this family. I mean, this was the closest neighbor. And a lot of people in the church will say, no, that's because he didn't like them, because he didn't get them treasure. Well, okay. But also back then, treasure digging was super common and it was rarely prosecuted. This was like few and far between that you would ever, it's like jaywalking. Like nobody got in trouble for this. But they sucked so bad and swindled so many people for money that they were like, okay, sonny boy, that's enough. And so they took him to court. And so now we have this treasure that no one can erase because they're court documents. And so it's great for me, but not so good for the church, I imagine. The next piece that is not going to be able to go away for the church, and they've kind of leaned into it this year like I've never seen them do, which I believe has an association with this stuff getting out into the public. So Russell M. Nelson is the current president of the church, and he was just in a photo shoot maybe a couple weeks ago, actually trying on the hat that Joseph Smith used for seeing the plates. He like literally would put the stone in the hat and cover up, and he would just, do this with, peep stoning. And I mean, they've never ever leaned into it. They've always kind of said, well, yeah, that was a thing, but we use this thing called a Urim and Thummim, which was like a breastplate with these glasses on it. And it was very Masonic. And people know that now. So I think they've leaned away from that just a little bit. And they are literally embracing this folk magic part because they're like, oh, well, that's okay because it was old timey stuff, right? No, they just can't get rid of it. And this is why. These parchments, and these are amazing, let me tell you. These parchments and treasure bag are not owned by the church, and they can't get rid of them. And
Oh, wow.
so, yeah, yep. And they're owned by a private owner that will not disclose any more information or photos. These are the only photos available that I'm going to show you guys. And they try and blame them on the brother, Hiram. Well, let me tell you about Hiram. Hiram wasn't charismatic. Hiram was a quiet, studious boy. He went to Dartmouth College, even though these are supposed to be dumb farm boys. He went to Dartmouth Indian College. It was like an offshoot, but it was actually inside the college. And he had plenty of opportunity to bring home many books, including my conjecture, the Magus was probably one, but we can't prove anything. So they want to blame this on Hiram. They're like, this is Hiram's stuff. Well, they were shot together. So they divided the things, and this ended up with Hiram's family. Now, do I think that his wife really wanted this back? Probably not. There was a lot of problems with his treasure digging and court cases and blah, blah, blah. So she probably was like, yeah, take it. I don't want that. And she only wanted something else of his, which we will get to because it's great. And so another thing that the church has kind of leaned into lately, and I'm always at amazement what they do. This is a close-up of one of the parchments, and it's more deciphered. It's colored in so that we can see. Obviously, it doesn't look like this, and I do have a real picture of it. How does this look to you? Does it look like Christian things?
No, not at all. More like Masonic. Yeah.
Yeah, Masonic, occult, Enochian is where I go.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Which we're going to get into. However, I didn't understand why everybody just stopped at Masonry for Mormons. If you talk to anyone, they'll be like, well, yeah, they're Masons. Even Mormons will say, oh, yeah, we know now. Even though it used to be like, oh, we're not. When I grew up, that was like a no. Like when I grew up, okay, Joseph Smith wasn't a polygamist when I grew up at all. They taught us, nope, he never was. He loved his wife. That was all. Okay. The second thing we were taught about Kolob, the planet, and how we could get one and blah, blah, blah. That now, if you ask somebody about it, they'll say, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean? Where did it go? And they're just like, what? And you're like, what? And that's all. They try to just gaslight it. It's just horrible. And the third thing is now they cannot get away from the Masonic stuff. So what they did is released a little video on YouTube and said, yep, we have the true Masonry. We have the Masonry from God. It's the best thing ever. And, they make it work. But I'm just saying, like, that was never known when I was young, ever. And this wasn't that long. I mean, I'm a little old, but like, wasn't that long ago.
No,
We're
not at
talking
all.
20 years. Yeah. 25 years ago, these were teachings in the church. Like, nope, we weren't Masons. Nope. None of this magical stuff, And so here is a little diagram of the same thing I just showed you and what they mean for people at home. I zoomed in for that. And if you look at the bottom, oh, where does this take us? Dun, dun, dun. The Magus by Francis Barrett. These are things that are specifically referenced from these pieces in this. And this was Joseph Smith's or his brother's, but I'll give you a good case as to why I believe it was his. The Discovery of Witchcraft by Reginald Scott. and occult science. And then
Jeez.
the science. Yeah. It's just, you can't make it up,
No, not at all.
Liber officium spiritum sound very Christian to you. It isn't.
No.
And they want to lie. And that's what bugs me, because I'm like, okay, you are bringing people away from God and teaching them that this is God. This isn't God. This is something else. And I believe in freedom of choice. And if you want to be a Mason, if you want to be a Satanist, if you want to be an occultist, I really don't care. But you don't trick people, you
No, not
know?
at all.
Yeah, it's where I get really irritated. And the church should have definitely had a disclosure for me, because now I'm the biggest mouth on earth. So here we are. And I'm just going to make sure people have the choice now, which if they still want to be a Mormon, half my family's still Mormon. Like, I don't care, but they should know what's going on. And that's my biggest point. So that's the last one. That's called the Holiness to the Lord parchment. At the top, it says that. Guess where else it says that? It says that on the temple. The holiness to the
Oh,
Lord.
geez, I'm not surprised.
Which Lord? And you know that Lord, saying Lord instead of God, is also kind of occult in nature. Like, people will do it a lot, but if you go backward and you look into God and gods, like Lord comes up sometimes. So I'm always very clear when I pray, because I don't want to accidentally pray to anybody else. Speaking of which, praying to other people, this is the second one in these occult sigils. This is called the Jehovah parchment. And in the bottom corner across from the pentagram is this little weird symbol. And this is what led me down the strangest road as a Christian I could have. I was like, God, am I really supposed to check this out? Because this is getting creepy. And he's like, yeah, do it. So it is a sigil for a specific angel. This is a calling out to specific angels for protection, but not to God, to angels, which could be fallen angels. And the only place in the whole internet that I could find this dumb little symbol, I didn't know what it meant. I was just like, what did I do in that building and how do I fix it? This is what my thought process was. I wasn't like burn the church or like screw them or nothing. I was like, hey, I need to know as a Christian what I did in that building. So I want to know. And this is why I was studying. So when I found this and that little symbol, I reversed, looked it up, because I couldn't find it other places. Like, you can find certain other things. And the only place in the whole internet, like, it came back like the shortest search I've ever seen, John D. And I'm like, who's John D? I
So
had
you
no clue.
researched that.
I fell down that rabbit hole. And let me tell you what, and I just completely about lost it. I mean, when I started connecting the dots, it was like one of those CIA or FBI things with all the threads everywhere. And my brain was like, oh man. So we'll talk about that here in a minute, because it gets wow. And then this is the last parchment, and Joseph Smith Sr., Joseph Smith Jr. But where these that's cut off at the top, it says I can't tell. It's got a little green thing about the sharing, but it says they inherited by Hiram's family after Joseph and Hiram's death in 1844. The parchment is the property of a private collector, and these are the only photographs available. But when I zoom in on this guy, look who that is. Look familiar, like maybe Baphomet.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look quite right. Yeah. And so, oh, there. I still couldn't. At the top line, it just says they probably belong to Joseph Smith Sr. You have to put conjecture in there because we don't know. They're all dead. But, we do know who was the treasure digger. We do know that. Also, that Joseph Smith wore a Jupiter talisman. And on the back of it, it sure looks like John Dee's Enochian table. If you've ever seen it set up, that, my friends, is very similar. So I encourage people to look that up. Don't build one. You can do that, and it's dangerous. I highly 10 out of 10 do not recommend doing that. Joseph Smith owned the Jupiter talisman, which was among his most intimate possessions, according to Emma Smith, who is his wife. She wanted it back. And so she did verify this was his because she wanted it, and she got it back after he died. And so the talisman demonstrates Joseph's fascination with magic. The purpose of such a talisman was to help the owner have influence over others, become rich and powerful, and find peace. So, the magus, again, we're going to go back to Francis Barrett's The Magus. There was magical things posted in that match this, and this is cited by that as well. So it's extremely interesting to me that's the case, because they say that they don't have any occult attachments, right? Like, it's completely Christian. This was also in the treasure bag. This is a copy of that knife that the neighbor Willard Chase discussed, how they ritualistically slit the black sheep with a specific blade. And this is also very familiar. If anybody knows anything about occult stuff or the OTO, you have to have what? A dagger and a cup. There's certain things that you have to own for witchcraft, and this happens to be one of them. Ceremonial daggers are huge because they're for sacrifice. We hope animal sacrifice, but nevertheless, yeah. So it has the seal of Mars on it. The copy also shows white of the dagger with Adonai, Scorpio, and the intelligence of Mars on it. So they have it's like a specific prayer. It doesn't have to be said out loud when you actually do the killing, because it's already on the knife. So that's what ceremonial daggers are. So right here it says inscribed with occult and religious symbols, and that's just another copy of the real knife. It's in the center of it. Kind of looks like a rook thing right there, but that's the actual knife. This is how the Book of Mormon was translated. So,
laughable.
Yep. Oh, and on top of it, not just laughable, but interesting that it's very similar to John Dee, Nostradamus, multiple other people that did scrying. This is not unknown or unheard of. This is a actual pretty common practice in the occult to scry. And the fact is he also wasn't just shouting out like, okay, the letter P or the word blah, blah, blah. He wasn't doing that. He was actually giving symbols, just like Edward Kelly did. And these symbols that he would translate later at a later date. So he would tell the scribe, like, this symbol, that symbol. Well, he didn't know what they were. So he called them Reformed Egyptian, because he didn't know what they were. And so he just was messing with stuff he didn't fully understand. Joseph Smith used a brown cedar stone when translating the Book of Mormon. Well, it says likely because he had multiple, but this was his favorite one. The church does own this, and they finally had to cough it up. When I was young, there was no cedar stone in the museum. It's now in the Church Museum of History and Art because they've literally had to just give in. I mean, the hat wasn't a thing. We didn't know. We just knew that it was translated by the Urim and Thummim, and that was it. They really focused on that because they knew how this stuff was going to sound. And now, I don't know why they put the lid off it, but they sure have. And so they brought it out from the underground dungeon safes, who knows what. This is his other seer stone. If you know anything about the occult and witchcraft, stones with a circle hole in the middle are often used as well in the occult and witchcraft. So he used this one, but it wasn't his favorite. Then we get to more symbols. So these are the magical underwear.
Oh,
these are an
actual
picture, yes, of the magical underwear, which I wore for years upon years. However, I had no idea when I was wearing them that there was a square and compass on both of my nipples, and then a sideways ruler on the belly button as well as the knee. And so I had no idea. I grew up in the church, but I always thought they were darts for sewing for women. And I really never noticed the ones for men. I was oblivious, because when you grow up in something, you don't really question much. You really don't. You're just like, this is what we do. So yeah. I got those in the temple, and you have to wear them at all times, unless now they're like underwear. They have to be changed always like underwear. But you have to buy multiple pairs of these, and you can't just go get these off eBay. You have to have a current temple recommend. You have to be current in your tithing. Your tithing is 10% of your income, but it's not just you saying that. What happens is at tax time, you go in and you do tithing settlements. So you take your
Oh,
tax, yes, and they go off your gross, not your net. And they sit you down and say, okay, this is how much you should have paid. This is how much you paid. This is how much you owe the church. And if you're a deficit, then you might not be able to go to the temple that month. You might have to, I had to one time be a janitor for a couple months and scrub
wow.
toilets at the church. You have to do things. You can't just, skip out. That's not going to happen. So, yeah, they are very serious about their stuff. And especially when it comes to money. By the way, you cannot fake your temple recommend because they actually are really smart as a church. They're usually on top of all like the top next new thing. And all their temple recommends are barcoded. And so
Oh,
it brings up
jeez.
a picture of you and what you look like. You can't just be sneaking in. Like it's not going to happen. So they check that and they have people at the door of the temple and at the door where you buy these garments to check if you belong. And so I've also heard a lot of scandal that they get these made by sweatshops and that kids are involved. So
Yeah, I would
whether
not
or
be
not that's,
surprised.
yeah. And they're like $50 a piece, like for the total set. So these are like really expensive. And the long underwear here on this side, that is the ones the fundamentalists wear. They go down to the wrists and to the ankles, and you cannot show them. So you must wear clothes that are modest enough to not show them. And
Mhm.
so, yeah. And then the middle one is like kind of the one piece. They still do have it, but nobody wears them. So I mean, maybe older people. And then the ones with the two piece, that's the new and improved, for us. So nowadays. Also, these have to go closest to your skin. You can't wear underwear underneath them.
Huh.
You can't wear bras underneath them. They have to touch your skin. And it makes you really wonder, like, what exactly you're invoking there. This is just for people that don't know what the Masonic symbols are. So this is the exact outline and
Mhm.
how they're laid out on those garments. So also after they are worn out, you have to cut these symbols out and burn the little pieces. So
Jeez.
yes, it's serious. And then this is our temple outfits. So
Oh,
when you go to the temple, you have to wear temple clothes, and that includes the day you're getting married. So if you want to be a beautiful bride and walk down the aisle, that's not happening at the Mormon Church. Well, the Mormon temple. So when you go, you and get married, this is literally what you're in. And it doesn't matter about your dress or not. You can wear it to take pictures outside the temple. And a lot of people now do like a little fake wedding and stuff afterward now because a lot of families got really upset because if you're not temple worthy, if your like mother-in-law is Catholic or she can't come. So it got really controversial because people were like waiting in little waiting rooms while their families got married. And so yeah, it didn't go over
jeez,
well.
that's
And it's
nuts.
still that way. Yeah, it's still that way to this day. And they'll say, well, that's because you can't go in there. It's a sacred ceremony. And that's because it's weird, to be honest. You're kneeling over an altar and holding each other's hands and looking into forever mirrors, like the mirrors that go on and on and on forever, which is
Oh,
also
yeah.
very witchcraft. Yeah. And so this is the stuff that's going on. And I think they just don't want other people in there because honestly, if you saw that and you weren't a Mormon and you
You'd
would
say,
be
what
like,
the heck is this?
yeah, like what is happening here? Then these are the signs and penalties that we do. And you have to learn other ones, including specific handshakes, which will look really familiar here to
Oh,
Masonry in a
Freemason
minute.
handshakes, yeah.
Yeah, we're missing two of the five. Mormons only do three. And then they don't do this one anymore that the OT OTO does. For people that don't know what the OTO is, that is Aleister Crowley's religion, Thelema. So they do that one, and we used to do it until the 80s, late 80s. It got removed because too many people were pretty upset about swearing they were going to slit their necks from ear to ear and spill their bowels if they spoke. So yeah, kind of got thrown out there. This weird stuff they're doing in the corner with their hands up. This is also something I like to warn people about, because if you have a Mormon friend and they're like, "Oh, you're going through a hard time," and they don't say, "Let me pray for you." What they'll say is, "Let me put your name on the temple list."
Oh,
And what that means is they're going to have people there doing this. That's what they're doing with their hands raised up. And they put this list in like a printed book. And then they do this 3 times as they say, "Oh God, hear the words of my mouth." They used to say Pele El, and that got like really controversial because of the Latin. Some people tried to decipher it with like Latin, and it was kind of a weird translation. And everybody was going back and forth whether it meant false god or whatever. But El is, just so people know, El is a title. It's not just God. It could be gods. It could be any god. And so, it's also in angels. That's why every angel is at the end El, Gabriel, Raphael. They all are L's because they're on God's divine council. So, when we're talking about fallen angels, and if they just shorten it to L, that's kind of a problem, right? Like it could be anybody. So this is also another copy of our little temple outfits, and they're raising their hands to the Masonic square and doing a grip. The thing is, the women used to have to veil their faces whenever they would talk about the priesthood.
oh.
And so now they don't do that anymore either, because that wasn't widely accepted
You
anymore for
think?
the women, right? That doesn't make friends. So they made a lot of changes to this divine thing that they received, and they're not supposed to change. But God apparently changed his mind. I don't know. These aprons are green. They just look black in this photo. But as you can see, there's a one-sided robe that goes over us, including the women. I mean, we have like a white dress or a white shirt underneath. So it goes like across, like a banner. Well, that's also very Masonic and very OTO to have one bare breast, right? They're not bare because they're all covered up, but it symbolizes that. If you look at their Christus, this picture of Jesus that they have, it also has a bare breast and one-sided Jesus. So yeah, interesting, huh?
Very.
It's definitely not something you would recognize with Christianity, that's for sure.
Not at all. Not any of the
No,
different
definitely not.
denominations or even Catholicism. I mean, I grew up a Catholic and they had so many different things, but not nearly anything like this.
Right. Yep. It's very strange. So yeah, when I went for the first time, it was shocking. It was quite it was quite the situation, sitting there going, "What are we doing exactly? Please tell me what we're doing. This is strange." These are the Masonic grips. This isn't an actual picture of the temple ones, but it is almost identical. So I put them in here. Like, they just changed the name. So for example, that last one is the real grip of the Master Mason, the lion's paw. Well, for us, it's the true sign of the nail. So like Jesus' nail in his wrist. So he just was very smart that way. He was he was no dummy. Let's say that. This is a diagram of the Salt Lake City Temple. And this was in a really old book I found called Masons and Mormons. And it shows all the astrological, like the moon and the sun phases and all this stuff that they did the layout for inside the temple. So all the months and calendar months and all this, it's really interesting, since we're not supposed to focus on astrology like that. This is currently being redone. This is the outside of the Salt Lake City temple. There are moonstones, cloudstones, sunstones, pentagrams, everything you could think of as far as symbolism on this building. However, currently it needed a renovation, and I've heard that they're covering them up. So,
Oh,
yeah, of course, right? Like they're going to do whatever they can do to cover up these things. So, yeah. Let's see. So this apron was the Masonic apron of Joseph Smith, but it also was their aprons before we got the green aprons, because my great grandma told me. And she
okay.
was like, yeah, she was like, too bad you don't have the cool aprons we used to have, because they were much better than the green fig leaves. I was like, well, they also scrubbed her down in a bathtub. So
Oh,
I wouldn't have wanted to trade that experience for the better apron, but
no,
yeah.
not at all.
This also represents that fig leaf apron in the ceremony. Satan comes and he's wearing a black apron and he says, "Hey, you're naked. You should put on some, things to cover yourself up." And so he gives us the apron. And what they say at that point is, "Please stand." And all the patrons stand. And then they say, "Put on your apron." Why are we doing what Lucifer wants us to do? That seems so weird. Like when you think about it, that just doesn't seem quite right. But here it is again saying, in the 1960s and before, Satan came to the temple and wore an apron with many symbols on it, including an all-seeing eye, a beehive, a skull, crossbones, compasses, suns, moons, stars, etc. Ask your grandparents if they're LDS. They're not going to tell you, by the way. I mean, my great grandma did, but they're probably not. It's a
No.
thing. This is the money that was created by Joseph Smith. He created his own banking system. He ran for president. Yeah, he was a situation. I mean, he was trying to go the whole way, and I do believe it got him killed just because he was
Hmm.
always trying to be different, like how this is a $3. He was also an abolitionist. That wasn't very popular. He ordained a black man. That wasn't good at all for the church. Like that really upset a lot of people. Brigham Young was his next down at that time, and Brigham Young is as racist as they come. And so this probably caused a lot of issues, and a lot of people, and even I, wonder if he had him killed, because it just seemed too odd, the
That
timing
would
of it.
definitely make sense, that's for sure.
Definitely. This is a little sample on the bottom here of the actual characters that they called out when they were doing this translation, okay, for the Book of Mormon. But the top lines, and I'll small it back down here, is the Enochian alphabet by John Dee.
Okay.
So if you zoom it back in, and it will take away that top line, but you can see those are really similar. They're this is a real copy, because they took it to have it like authenticated to this guy, and he did originally authenticate it as like Egyptian of some sort, and then he found out how they got it, that they were like doing this scrying and weird occult stuff, and he was like, "No way, I'm not doing that." And they were like, "Can you give our stuff back?" And he said, "Nope, I sure won't." And so he kept it, and that was, part of it. So that's why we have a copy of this to this day. So this, if you guys want, if I haven't convinced you enough that all of this is total BS, you need to go look up the Book of Abraham, because
Hmm.
it is so I don't even think the church likes to discuss it, because at this point they can't really refute it, but they also don't know what to do because they can't get rid of it. And so I remember this was in the Book of Mormon when I was young, because I was always fascinated by the photo. And he said it was Abraham and Isaac, and that, this was a photo of Isaac being killed. And actually what it is, they used to have dealers come through town and sell mummies and different things. Well,
Okay.
this is, yeah, he bought two mummies also while he bought this. And this was from a funeral procession. And now that they know Egyptian, like nobody counted on that the internet would happen and that someday we would know all this stuff. And now they don't know what to do about it, So Yeah, that's fun. The Book of Abraham, that's a whole rabbit hole to go down. So if I didn't convince you with the treasure bag,
Mhm.
that's the pictures, but I do have a lot more information. So I'll just shut this. Uh, there we go. And we'll go back to some little history of the church. Let's see here. I can get it to get bigger again, maybe. It's being sassy.
Mhm.
It doesn't want to expand. You're really tiny. I'm trying. Nope, that didn't work either. I've never had it not expand. Well, that's good enough. Unless, does it look weird for you too?
No, it just shows your screen. It doesn't even show it.
Oh, it does show. I think maybe I just have to push stop.
Ah, okay.
Pause share and stop share. There we are.
There we
Okay,
go.
now I'm tiny. I don't know why, but
No,
if
you're
it
perfect.
looks
Yeah, it looks
okay, if
great.
it looks normal for you, I'll leave it because it's not important because I'm going to be reading. So also with Joseph, when he was young and when he was born, his dad ran around town and started telling everyone that he was going to be a seer at birth because he was born in a call. And so that doesn't even happen very often to this day. It's pretty rare. As a nurse, I can tell you I did labor and delivery. I've never seen it happen. It doesn't happen. And so he ran around saying, "Oh, he's gonna be a seer. He's gonna be special." So literally, this kid was indoctrinated in this by the time he could probably talk. His early life, then it was in New York and Vermont, and like I said, his ancestors were all like ancestors, even some were in the Salem witch trials. Like it's a whole situation. So they they had a fraternity of the Rodmen that the dad was involved with. He was definitely into using divining rods. His mom was a healer, a known healer, folk magic, palm reader. And this kid is sick all the time because he got typhoid fever when he was about 7. And so this is integral to why I believe he became so invested in like channeling or doing weird things because he couldn't go work the land. He was hurt and sick for a long time. It went to his
Mhm.
bone. He ended up with osteomyelitis and they should have cut off his leg. And
Uh,
instead, his mother begged. She's like, please just cut out the parts that are bad and let him heal. And they did that over and over. And this kid did it without any sedation. He wouldn't drink at that time because his dad was a drunk. And so he was afraid. And probably, later he did drink, but that was probably smart at that point in his life, knowing what we know now about, generational things. But and so he was home and he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. And interestingly enough, his cane, which I need to add to those slides, is a serpent cane.
hmm.
It's like a serpent staff. It's very, yeah. I mean, people will say, well, Moses's, staff turned into a snake. Maybe that was why, but I just felt that was kind of interesting. So he spends all this time in the house and with his mom. And what are you gonna do when you're poor and you're a kid and you can't go anywhere? You're gonna
Right.
read. You're gonna read every
Exactly.
single thing. Yeah. And his brother, like I said, eventually went to Dartmouth and probably bought him books. Like, even if he's healed by that point, you're going to be an avid reader. JFK was the same way. He was sick as a kid and he was an avid reader. He became really smart because he was in bed a lot when he was a kid with kidney problems. So,
Mhm.
I mean, that's just kind of a thing that happens if you're a sickly kid. I know I was the same way and I am an avid reader. So, anyways, about 13, he gets out and about in town and he's always, watching and looking around and he meets this guy named Lumen Walters. So interesting that this guy's name is Lumen, like light bearer. So this guy comes to town and it's his future wife's cousin. And he had been traveling the world. Again, another source he could have got the magus from, because what are you going to give a kid that's all laid up? Probably a book. He had just come from Europe. He was known to kind of be like a snake oil type guy. He wasn't on the up and up. And he liked to go and read to the people out of like Agrippa and stuff like that. So
Mm.
he was like, look, I'm magical. I can make these words into another story. And he watched this. So also this is imprinting into this kid's head, like, oh, look, these chicken farmers think he's magical, because he knows how to read Latin or whatever. And so that happened. And this guy took a liking to him. And often they were seen together. And he was actually known as, quote unquote, a magician. And so it was very interesting to me. There is a satire of the Book of Mormon called the Book of, I want to say Pukei, but it's like Pukai.
Mm.
And the guy that did this satire, he actually made Joseph Smith so mad he had to go get a copyright of the Book of Mormon because he was like, that's enough, like making fun of me. But he mentions a magician in it. He mentions Lumen Walters. That's why we kind of know about this situation, because he was like making jokes about it and like how this magician came to town and blah blah blah. So it was interesting to me that came up, because otherwise we may not have that information.
No, not at all.
Um and there's some other really strange things. Like I'll tell you, the story of William Morgan for the Masons. You know this story at all? How he
Yeah,
disappeared?
I've heard about
Yeah.
it.
So actually his wife that was left behind when he disappeared, or was disappeared, one of the two, Joseph Smith married in a Mormon marriage ceremony on January 22nd, 1846. There is documentation that this occurred. And so the one thing Mormons is excellent about documenting genealogy and marriages and deaths and these things, because it becomes integral into what I believe is really going on with the church. We do these things the first time, all this weird stuff that I showed you, for yourself. So the first time you go through the temple, you're going to go through for you. You're going to get a new name. You're going to get new underwear. You're going to get all this stuff. And then the next time you go, which you say you'll go often, you're going to go through and get a name of a dead person at the door. And they're going to say, here you go. Today you're going through, well, let's see, for Hitler, they did Hitler. They also did multiple Jews, until the Jewish people were like, okay, really, that's not funny, because they were doing like the Auschwitz Jews. And that is
Jeez.
just so wrong. They died
Hmm.
for what they believed. They've also done thousands of other people like Eazy-E, George Carlin, Barack Obama's mother, Steve Irwin, Elvis, Anne Frank, Princess Diana, Gandhi. The list goes on and on. So they're doing all this with these dead people. And they're also, on the other hand of it, that's what we do, what I was describing to you. They're doing marriages for them, they're sealing them, and they're doing baptisms for the dead with them. Okay.
Oh.
All this stuff is dead, 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 right? Like these people are deceased. Well, okay, that is God a word. When you speak to people about things with the dead, it's called necromancy. And this leads you back to Abraxas, because Abraxas was a necromancer. And what do you do for necromancy? Why would you even perform that, right? Like why would you, what's the point? Well, it was to gain knowledge, wisdom, and future sightings for the future. Well, what do we
Okay.
call our prophet of our church? A prophet, seer, and revelator.
Hmm.
And these temples are all built the same way, and they come to points, and there's usually spires. Now, also, they've got the gold Moroni on the top. So we know that's for conduction. Like now we know, most people know that spires and different metals on the top of buildings, that's usually for conduction. So in my conjecture, I believe that they're harnessing a lot of this occult type stuff that people don't know. Like if your grandma was doing it, or my grandma or my mom or whoever, they would never understand or know any of this. They would just think they're being good Mormons and that they're going to go to heaven, and that's all. They don't have nefarious bone in their body usually. Okay. But when you get to the upper echelon of anything, whether it's politics, whether it's religion, right? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I do believe that this is the case, especially now with the Mormon Church, because their current president of their church is not only an Allen Key member, but a Skull and Bones member. And they
Wow.
don't
Yeah.
hide this crap anymore.
Hmm.
It's like, okay. And you just step back and go, really? Like, and then here's the thing. The whole church began with a boy out in the woods asking God to come to him and tell him what's up, right? Well, what happened to him is he passed out. He had like a fit and everything went
Mm.
dark and he passed out. If you look up the story of Muhammad, every time Gabriel would come, he would pass out. Every time he'd get a vision, he would pass out. So this stuff is like, okay, Thelema, Aleister Crowley saw an alien, not an angel, because he wouldn't have accepted a being of light. They can come as any form or shape. I mean, let's be real, they can do what they want.
Hmm.
It came as an alien, Awas, in Egypt, and it said, here, channel this book, write it down. It became a religion, Thelema. Muhammad with Gabriel, they wrote it down at some point, not at that time, because it wasn't a written tradition at that point, but later after he died, they did, and it became a religion. Also, Joseph Smith wrote it all down. It became a religion after he talked to an angel. John Dee wrote it all down. I mean, come on, like all of them. And that went into the Rosicrucian movement, and it became a lot of things, and we just go down this on and on. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt like where it came from as far as me for my studies at this point. I think it's pretty clear what the book is. And even in the Bible, I talk to ex-Mormons or new Mormons or whoever, and I'm like, or Mormon, real still Mormons. And I'm like, the Bible says, even if an angel comes to you and gives you another book straight from the angel, you are not to use it. It's not
Yeah.
good. What did we do? We use it anyway. So, and I say we when I talk Mormons because I was one for so long, but I'm not a Mormon.
No,
And I just,
obviously
yeah,
not.
yeah. No, I was just telling the audience because I say it so much. I say we or me or whatever, but I just think it's really interesting that every time you go down that pathway, we also get one more thing with it. It's not free. John Dee and Edward Kelly had to swap wives. Thelema, that whole mess, and the Enochian, or not Enochian, the Amalantra workings and all this stuff that Jack Parsons and them were doing, all that also became a religion, right? After they were channeling things and they had to do sex stuff out in the desert, like with each other present, we don't know how far that went. And then, with Muhammad and Joseph, it became polygamy on both. It's always some sexual thing that's attached. That's not God.
Not at all.
I mean,
No.
yeah, no, like it seems completely contraindicated to what God would really want you to do. Anytime God comes down, he doesn't like require some sexual perversion to talk to you. Like that's not happening with
No, it's
Moses or
crazy.
yeah, like yeah. And all of this is also really relatable to Jewish mysticism. And where did that come from? That's the occult side of things. Like it's not, people don't study enough. They just take it for what it is. They're like, oh, well, I believe this is true because I believe. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I just told you maybe a fallen angel like gave him this information because he saw 24 fallen angels, angels and or dead people. And everybody's just like, yeah, that's normal. Fun fact, another little occulty piece is the day that he got the plates. About 9 months later, he had a son because it was like on that night he had just got married, and they went home and whatever. And she had a baby 9 months later. That baby was born extremely deformed. It only lived a few moments, and then it died. And they named it his dead brother's name, and the dead brother was also the first son. That sounds really Faustian. So I think there's a lot there. I mean, I'm giving like a quick rundown, but have you heard of any? Do you have questions for me, or like, should I keep around? I don't know.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask is how did you wake up to this and how did you get out of this cult?
I was so dumb. I was so dumb. I would have probably stayed in. I was not like not dumb. I was indoctrinated. I
Mm-hmm.
was so indoctrinated that I did not want to really look at anything. Like if somebody said anti-Mormon stuff to me, even though I wasn't active anymore, I had stopped going to church and stuff. I wasn't wearing my garments. I kind of didn't believe, but also there's always that little piece of you that's like, well, yeah, but. And so I met my husband, and my mom had already gotten out. She told me, like, you really need to look into this, because she became a born again Christian, non-denominational. My husband was also non-denominational. And at that time we were just dating, and he said, you just need to watch this YouTube video for me. And I said, okay. And I'm watching and I'm like, why did they put the temple stuff in here? This is so bad. Who put this on TV? Like, what's going on here? And he stopped me and he said, it's a masonry. It's a Mason temple thing. It's not a Mormon thing. And I was like, no, it is. It's what we do. And he's like, I know, but that's a Mason temple thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? So that
Mm-hmm.
kind of jarred me, because that's only supposed to be knowledge for people like in the Mormon Church temple, to my knowledge. So then I was like, oh, well, I don't want to do weird stuff. Like, what? Like, I'm not a Mason. Like, I just thought the Mormons did this. And so my husband said, listen, you got to watch Sean McCraney. And there's this show called The Heart of the Matter. And it was on YouTube. And I started listening to it. And he used to be a bishop and a missionary and all these things. And he left and found God, and he talked about it. So I would listen to him. And I actually lost my daughter over that,
Mm-hmm.
because my grandma heard that I was listening to anti-Mormon propaganda, and my
Ah,
daughter was really upset about this. She was 17 and she had a missionary boyfriend in the mission field.
ah,
So she was trying to be like Molly Mormon girl. And my grandma filed CPS charges against me and said I beat her and all this stuff to get her away
yes.
from me. And so she took her, and I missed her whole senior year until almost graduation. It was about February before we spoke again, and that was from August to February. So CPS dropped the case, but they also gave me some advice like, hey, she's going to be 18 in like 5 months. You might want to just let her go. I mean, we're dropping the case against you. It's not warranted, but if you want to try and save this with your daughter, maybe like work on things and let it go. And I did, and she did come home, but that relationship was permanently damaged. She doesn't speak to me to this day. We got back together, and it went.
Mm-hmm.
We were best friends, and it was just really good until she met the next person that could take care of her, which is her new husband. He doesn't like us. We've only met him 3 times, and I haven't seen her again in 5 years. So she has a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he just doesn't like us. And I'm like, you don't even know us. And he's not Mormon. That's not the reasoning. And they live far away. So um, sometimes you got to know when to just not. I mean, the first year I tried really hard, but I mean, eventually you just have to let go and wait. And that's where I'm at
I'm
now.
with
But
you. Yeah, I've had similar situations. So,
And it's hard because you want to push. You want to,
mm-hmm.
like, I'm a very persistent person, and that's not my nature. But also sometimes you just gotta let it go. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting, and I hope to see her someday. But I mean, if we can't fix it, like that's up to other people. But it did damage that relationship really badly. And I lost all of my extended family when I left the church. So I had my mom and my dad, and then my kids are all out and firm non-believers of that. They're all just born again Christian. And yeah, I lost all my uncles, aunts, great uncles, like people that I'd been around my whole entire life. And no, my grandma made sure of that. She made me look very bad after I left. So, and she said, oh, it's not about the church. Yeah, right. Okay.
And
We
just
were
like
best
me, you would
friends.
never be in an organized religion again, would you? It was
Ever,
denomination, you name
ever.
it.
No, nope. I believe in the Bible, and I believe in God, and that's all. And there is nothing between us and God. There is
Thank
no
you.
man.
Exactly.
Yes, there's nothing. And my children, I have just pounded that into them. Even when I got baptized this last year, even though I was out for a long time and I did have a true testimony, I never got baptized because I didn't know where to do it or how to do it because I don't go to
Mm.
church. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to ask this guy that I see him a lot. I know he posts a lot on social media about God, and he's not a Mormon, he's non-denominational, and he wanted me to go to his church, and I said, no, I want to do it outside. I want to do it in it. And I wanted the river, but it was really high that year and it was dangerous. So my whole family and myself did it at a reservoir. And actually later that day, there was an earthquake.
Oh, gee.
So I don't know if there was like, I don't know if that was a lot of spirit or a big fight for us, but anyways, God won. So that was kind of a weird thing that happened. But yeah, so even though he was nice, I never went to his church. I mean, if I wanted to go worship or get like the sacrament, I would, but I would not be long. No. Uh,
No,
And I
I'm the
don't,
same way.
I don't fault people that do want to do that. If you need that in your life, then that's okay. But for me, fool me once, right? Like I'm good. Like
Exactly.
yeah, I do church 5 days a week, sometimes six.
Hmm.
I'm talking about God and studying the scriptures and preparing for things and praying. And I probably do more studying than most pastors. Like, honestly, I'm constantly doing that because of this whole situation. I mean, it's kind of like doing the same thing. So you have to prepare for it and you have to bulk up on your prayers because sometimes you get some issues with that when you speak out. I've definitely felt at times where if I don't put on that armor today, like, oof, that was a rough day. I got nailed. But you just keep going. It's fine.
I know exactly what you
Yeah.
mean. And there's so much division too between different sects, different denominations, and the whole thing of the Sabbath really being Saturday, you know?
Yeah,
So,
we don't even have the proper any calendar dates. Every holiday is paganistic. Like, I mean, and do
yes.
I still celebrate them? Yeah. But the thing is, your intention, you got to have your intention
Hmm.
correctly laid. Like, and I tell my kids, like, we're not really sure, like I've read different things here and there. I've read against it. I've heard about Saturnalia, but then I've heard about, Africanus and him saying, no, no, we had this, Jesus's birthday was before and then the pagans took it. So if you get into all of this, you know, it gets hairy. I don't know, and you can get back to all these people that did, the books of those times. That's all we got. So
Hmm.
I studied the Bible. I studied the Apocrypha. I don't believe books should have been taken out.
No, not at all. I'm with you
No.
100%.
Yeah, we should be studying those books. And they're just so important. And even if you want to take it with a grain of salt, that's okay. But you should still be informed. And
Hmm.
the occult stuff, not everyone should know, but certain people should. Because if you are someone like me and I come out here to talk to you about all this stuff and I didn't know the stuff that I was led to study, I would have missed all of that. I would not know those symbols. I would not know, oh, this is this and that, and whatever. And then you talk to other people. Like I've talked to New York Patriot, shout out New York Patriot. And he's like, hey, I used to be in the OTO, and this is definitely what some of the stuff we do. And talk to Paranoid American, shout out Paranoid American. He is a Mason. He's a 32nd degree Mason. And he's like, absolutely, this is familiar to me. So, I mean, and I'll interview any of them. I'm not afraid. People are
No,
like,
no.
"Oh, that's yeah, that's bad. He's a Mason." I'm like, I don't care what he does. Like, that's okay. He's going to help me learn, you know,
Hmm.
or he's a Catholic or I don't even care. Like, if Damien Eccles wanted to come on because he has a thing for Joseph Smith, I would interview him. That's
There you
fine
go.
with
And that
me.
that's how it should be, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's like too many people get caught up in like it's kind of like their own little circles or whatever, and then nobody learns. Like if you're just
Hmm.
in a church circle and that's all you know, then you're never gonna know. And you want to pray a lot. And I journal with my Bible study
Hmm.
because I think that it means something different all the time. When you open that book, it could mean something totally different tomorrow than it did today for the same verse because it's the living word.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and I believe in that. Yeah. I've almost died quite a few times, and I know for a fact that God is real and he protects us, he loves us, he gave us that book. You know, the content doesn't have to be perfect to be pretty together. It's pretty together. I mean, we have like scrolls and everything to back this up. Like, where's the Mormons? Oh, wait, the plates. Where did they go? Where are they? Wait. It's a good story. He had to give them back to the angel because he said, give them back. And he took them to heaven. That's where they are.
Mhm.
So it's too convenient. I mean, and then people say the same about the Bible. They're like, well, we don't have any proof. I'm like, we do though. We have a lot.
Mhm.
We have a lot. And we even have books from other people that don't believe in the Bible talking about the books of the Bible. So I'll take that one, you know? Yeah,
I'm with
it's
you.
interesting. But yeah, it was a weird, I mean, to this day, it's weird. I live in the Mormon Mecca of the world.
Yeah,
I
obviously
live,
Utah.
yeah, I live in Utah, and all my neighbors like kind of know. A lot of them know. The cat got out of the bag, and it's gotten awkward. My little girl doesn't play with hardly anyone anymore, not because of me.
Mm,
Um, and it sucks, you know, that sucks. They're supposed to be really loving Christians,
mhm.
and not very many of them are. So,
That's
but you
very
can't change
sad.
people. Yeah, you
No,
can't
not
change
at
them.
all. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm over here in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is right on the coast, like right by the beach. And I could not tell you where there is a Mormon place here, which
Good.
is good, So
Yeah, the Baptists made sure on that one. They were
oh,
on it. They were
that's
like,
a
no
good point.
Mormons coming here. Yeah, they were
No.
smart.
But
Yeah, I
even
think
any of
so.
the even any of the Christian churches, I've gone once, and it was all like it was just like she was talking about NFL football, and I don't watch
Yeah.
NFL football. I don't, I watch some
Yeah.
soccer, but that's it. But it's just like that. This was not, and I just asked them afterwards. Oh, that's another thing too. I asked them afterwards, what did you do? Were you open with the during the pandemic and all that? Did you fight,
Yeah.
stand up? Because this was on one of this website that had actually churches that stood up, and he's like, oh, well, we were open, but we masked, and we offered
Yeah.
masks, and we had sanitizer everywhere. And it's like that's another
You're
thing that
like,
I just don't
okay.
comprehend. People are so obsessed with that hand sanitizer, and it's like we never we never had that growing up, and we were fine.
No, no. And I don't believe it does exactly what they say it does.
No,
And good
not
old
at all. No, it
hand
doesn't.
washing is way more
Mhm.
important. Like hand
Yes.
washing as a nurse, I can tell you like it's imperative. And half the time now, they don't have a sink really close by. It used to be you
Mm.
had to have a sink for the nurse, you know? And now it's like the med sink, and I'll have to take things in there with me because I want to just wash my hands like
Hmm.
regular person. And they just don't encourage it, like the sanitizer. It's gone crazy. Who knows? I mean, who knows what we're doing to ourselves with that, by the way? Like, I don't even want to. Yeah.
No, not I'm with you. I avoid it, so
Yep. I
it's
mean,
strange.
if I have to and there's no other way, okay, I'll do it. Yeah. But otherwise, I'm like, I don't know about that. And for
Mhm.
kids, I mean, who knows what their bodies are a lot different than ours, and who knows what is happening with that whole situation. So I don't think it's very good. Yeah. But yeah, so that's my whole Mormon spiel. I
No,
have
this
other,
this
if
was
you have
great.
questions or,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm so, I'm glad that you got out, and I
Yes.
think it's great to like resonate, whether there be Mormon, Christian, you name it, to like-minded individuals, or
Yes.
not you name it.
Yeah. God isn't, I think God made it pretty clear in the Bible that he doesn't dwell in buildings. And yet here we are back to the times of old when Jesus was throwing tables, the temple thing for Mormons, having these fancy temples, and, other churches, same thing. All this stuff is just money that could be used to help
Hmm.
people. I mean, honestly, like the charity factor has gone out the door for the most part on a lot of them, not all, but I'm just saying, like, some of this stuff could be way played down,
Mhm.
way played down. And, if you're the richest churches in the world, maybe you should use that money for, I don't know, people.
There you go.
Yeah, helping people. But that's, as for me, I don't like anything that's organized like that anymore, just because the level of corruption, even if you put your full faith in something,
Mhm.
it's still a man and they're going to let you down. Like,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, that's just the facts. Yeah.
And it's
Mm.
somebody's opinion, even if you go to a service, it's somebody's opinion and
Yeah.
their take
Yep.
of it. And you don't know what their, you don't know what their agenda is either. So many churches have been infiltrated by politics and stuff. And I'm somebody,
Mhm.
and I'm sure you are too. You just, politics
I
is
don't do it.
destroying it
Yeah.
just like religion. It's like, dude,
Well,
let's just love humanity.
yeah. What does it say in the Bible about this? It says, let Caesar have what is
Hmm.
Caesar's. Like, we're not
Yes.
supposed to be a part of that. And I don't get a part of that. And I don't think any mortal man here on this earth is going to save me, because
Hmm.
I'm already saved. And I don't think that anybody that you think is going to save you is probably in a position to do that, if they're
No.
in a position, like if they're running for president, if they are up a high level, if they have a lot of money. Why do you think they have all that? Like, if somebody was like Jesus, they would have killed him. That's the truth. Like, he would have made it.
Hmm.
So that's my thoughts on it, is like, anybody that was that wholesome or good, really, really good, they would have killed him. I
Hmm.
mean, look what happened last time. They're not going to let that. They're not going to let that happen. Mm-mm.
No,
No,
they won't at all. Yeah.
no. And we all have to raise our vibration enough to like understand that God isn't in like buildings. God isn't in your pastor. God isn't in
No.
even, it's just, you have to just do the work, and people don't want to.
Hmm.
They don't want to read the Bible. That's a drag. And
And we need to be
they're not.
able to take care of ourselves. God isn't, and it's like these elected officials are, we didn't elect them, and we're not called to worship them. And that's a sad thing I will say about America is people are so sucked into it, or they're sucked into like victories, like for instance, when the Supreme Court struck down the vaccine mandate, like
Mm-hmm.
they don't even have the right to tell us what to put in our bodies. That's insane. Why would you
Right.
say,
Right.
yes, thank you, Supreme Court Justice?
Right. Thank
It's
you
like,
for letting me do what I should have been
yeah,
able to do.
who
Yeah.
those
Like,
people are clearly
what?
Freemasons too, so
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. It's all psyops. And people have to remember, like, revelation of the method, psyops, all these things are meant to be this way.
mhm.
They have to make somebody look like the bad guy to elevate somebody to hero status. Let's be real. Who is our God? Money. Like, who is the God of nowadays? Money, power, fame. What did Aleister Crowley say the last days would happen? We'll all be our own star. Oh, wait, social media. And I don't mean for spreading good word. I mean
Mhm.
for, look at me. I'm, making pancakes and I look phenomenal. What? That's so weird. That's so weird. Like, if you're posting them with your family or something, I get it, with your family on vacation, or I don't know, that kind of stuff. But like, just to do it to get 1,000 clicks because you didn't wear a bra and you made pancakes, probably more than 1,000, but you get what I'm saying. It's nonsense. For what? For what?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
One day that's not going to matter. Yeah.
Not at all. Well,
No.
I really appreciate you coming back on the podcast. This was such a thrill. I'll make sure to
Awesome.
post the link to Unfiltered Rise on the in the description. Is there a certain, do you normally do YouTube or is there other platforms
Um,
or
I do YouTube and I do Spotify at least once a week, if not more. And then I do
sure?
have a new series called Blood Atonement, and that's on
Oh,
Patreon only.
okay.
And so that's going to be really, well, it's already started.
Well,
And
be
it's
be sure to
about
text
all the
me your
murders.
Patreon. I'll put the Patreon in there
Sure.
too.
Yeah. Yeah, no
Great.
problem. And it's going to be about Mormons and murders. So
Oh,
anybody,
fascinating. Yeah.
yeah, so there's a lot of them.
Hmm.
It'll keep us busy. So, unfortunately, but fortunately for us anyway, for the story.
No, yeah. Hey, this
Yeah.
was so great. I really appreciate it, Heidi. We'll
Awesome.
have to do it again sometime.
Yes, I had a
Thanks
great
so
one. Thank
much.
you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.